Jack had always lived an ordinary life. He was a tech worker in the city, living alone in a small apartment. His days were filled with coding, meetings, and the usual routine of modern living. He had just gone through a rough breakup with his girlfriend, Emma. She had left him for reasons he didn't fully understand. In his mind, everything had been fine, but now he was left with a heart full of questions and a life that felt like it was slowly losing meaning. One chilly evening, Jack left his office, after a long day of staring at a computer screen, trying to find solutions to problems he didn't care about. His mind wandered as he walked down the crowded streets. People were bustling around him, but he felt like an invisible man in the crowd. He needed something, anything, to break the monotony. That's when it happened. A sudden flash of bright light tore through the sky above him. At first, Jack thought it was just another plane passing overhead. But this was different. The light streaked down at a crazy angle, too fast, too bright. His heart raced. It looked like a meteorite. He froze, staring up at the sky, unsure of what to do. Before he could react, there was an explosion in the distance, followed by a shockwave that shook the ground beneath his feet. Without thinking, Jack ran toward the source of the explosion. As he approached an empty lot at the edge of the city, he could see something smoking and glowing in the middle of the debris. The wind was fierce, kicking up dust and debris. He moved closer, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. It wasn't a meteorite. It was something far stranger. There, lying on the ground, was a woman. But not just any woman. Her skin was a deep shade of blue, and her eyes glowed with an eerie, otherworldly light. She was tall, far taller than any woman Jack had ever seen, and her body was covered in armor, sleek and metallic. Her hair, black as night, cascaded down her back in waves. Blood dripped from her side, staining the ground. Jack's heart pounded. He wasn't sure what he was looking at, but one thing was clear. She needed help. He hesitated for a moment, unsure of what to do. But then, his instincts kicked in. He couldn't just leave her here. She was hurt. He needed to help. Slowly, he moved closer, his voice shaky as he spoke. "Hey, are you okay?" Jack asked, his voice louder than he expected. The woman's eyes flickered open. At first, she looked confused. But then recognition dawned on her face. She slowly pushed herself up, wincing from the pain. She didn't speak, but there was a faint nod, and Jack realized she understood him. She was alive, but she wasn't human. There was something about her that was completely alien. She looked at him, and her lips moved, but Jack couldn't understand her language. He could see that she was trying to communicate, but there was no way to understand her words. "Don't worry," Jack said. "I'll get you some help." He took a step closer, reaching out to support her. The woman flinched at his touch, her eyes narrowing as if weighing the situation. But she looked around, her expression hardening. Then she grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. Her grip was firm, almost painful. "Help me," she said, her voice gravelly. It wasn't much, but it was enough to confirm that she could understand him. Jack nodded, trying to make sense of what was happening. He couldn't just leave her here. Whoever she was in trouble, and he couldn't turn his back on her. "Oh, I'll take you somewhere safe," Jack promised, though he had no idea where that might be. She didn't protest, though Jack noticed her eyes scanning the area. She was alert, aware of something he wasn't. He felt an unsettling sense of urgency in the air. The next few minutes were a blur as Jack helped the mysterious woman to his apartment. She barely spoke, but he could tell she was struggling. Her wounds were serious, and her strength was clearly fading. Jack wasn't sure what kind of technology her armor was made of, but it didn't look like anything he had ever seen before. It was sleek, almost liquid in its design, as if it had been forged by some advanced civilization. He noticed strange symbols engraved on the surface, symbols he didn't recognize. Once inside, Jack did what he could to help. He grabbed his first aid kit and worked quickly, trying to stop the bleeding. The woman didn't make a sound, but he could see the strain on her face. She was in pain, and it was clear she wasn't used to being helpless. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, his mind racing. Who was she? Why was she here? He had so many questions, but he couldn't ask her yet. She was too far gone to answer him. Instead, he focused on treating her wounds as best as he could, though he felt completely out of his depth. The silence between them was thick with tension. Every now and then the woman's eyes would flicker open, scanning her surroundings. She was alert, as if waiting for something. It made Jack nervous, but he didn't know what else to do. He could only hope that she would be okay. Then, a sudden noise outside startled both of them. Jack's head snapped toward the window. He heard the unmistakable sound of engines, faint but unmistakable. His heart skipped a beat. It sounded like, and not just any vehicles, the deep hum of something advanced. Jack's eyes widened in realization. Whoever she was being hunted. He could sense it now. The alien woman wasn't just a random stranger who had crashed on Earth. She was important. Important enough to be pursued by others. He moved quickly to close the blinds, trying to make the apartment look as normal as possible. But the sound outside grew louder, and Jack's panic grew. What if they found her? What if they knew she was here? He couldn't let that happen. He had no idea who they were, but he knew it wasn't safe for her. Or him. "Stay here," Jack said, trying to keep his voice calm. "I'll see what's going on outside." The woman's eyes met his with an intense look. She opened her mouth, as if about to say something, but then paused. There was something almost sorrowful in her gaze. "I have to protect you," Jack said, even though he didn't know how he would do that. Her gaze softened for a moment, and she nodded. Jack hesitated. This was madness. He was just an ordinary guy with no training, no special skills. How was he supposed to protect an alien warrior woman? He didn't know, but somehow he knew he couldn't leave her alone. Not now. As he moved to the door, the noise outside stopped. A tense silence settled over the apartment. Jack's pulse raced. Something was about to happen, and he wasn't sure if he was ready for it. But he couldn't back out now. Not after everything that had happened in the last hour. Not after meeting her. Jack stood by the window, trying to peek outside without drawing attention. The silence was unnerving. He had no idea who was out there, but his instincts told him something was wrong. The low hum of engines had stopped, but there was still a sense of tension in the air. It felt like the calm before a storm. His heart pounded in his chest, and he turned to look at the woman on his couch. She was still lying there, pale but breathing steadily. He had managed to stop the bleeding from her side, but she was far from okay. Her glowing eyes flickered every now and then, and Jack could tell that she was aware of the danger. She seemed to be waiting for something, but he couldn't figure out what. His mind raced with questions. Who was she? Why was she on Earth? And why were people after her? Jack had never been involved in anything like this before. He was just a regular guy who liked computers, a guy who was still reeling from a broken heart. And now, here he was, trying to protect an alien woman from some unknown force. He felt completely out of his depth, but something about her made him feel responsible. Maybe it was the way she looked at him, as if she trusted him, something that didn't seem possible for someone like her. She was strong, powerful, and yet, in this moment, vulnerable. He couldn't leave her alone. That much was certain. Slowly, he moved away from the window and sat down beside her. She didn't speak, but he could feel her gaze on him. Her eyes were filled with gratitude, but also something else, something he couldn't quite place. She was still an enigma, but Jack couldn't stop thinking about the bond that had already started to form between them. Jack felt a lump in his throat. He wasn't sure if it was fear or something deeper, but there was no time for doubts. He had to figure out what to do next. He needed to keep her safe, but he didn't have the first clue where to start. The sound of a vehicle pulling up outside snapped him out of his thoughts. His heart leaped into his throat. The noise outside wasn't just any vehicle. It was different, more mechanical, more menacing. And it was getting closer. Jack quickly glanced back at the woman. She was sitting up now, her eyes wide with alertness. She looked like she was ready for a fight, but Jack wasn't sure if she was in any condition to fight. Her armor, though strange, looked like it had seen battle. He could tell she was no stranger to combat, but it didn't seem like the kind of fight that could be won easily, not with her injured and not in her current state. "Who are they?" Jack whispered, though he wasn't sure if she could understand him. He had no way of knowing what language she spoke, but she seemed to pick up on his tone. Her eyes softened, and for the first time, she spoke again. "They are coming for me," she said in a gravelly voice. "I must leave." Jack's heart sank. "Leave? You can't just go?" "You're hurt." The woman shook her head, but there was a sadness in her eyes. "I am a warrior. It is my duty to fight. But they are too many." "You are in danger too." Jack's chest tightened. He hadn't expected to hear those words. He hadn't considered what kind of danger he might be in. He was just trying to help her, but now he was wrapped up in something much bigger than he had ever imagined. "I won't let them take you," Jack said, more forcefully than he expected. He felt a surge of protectiveness toward her, and the words just came out. The woman studied him for a moment, her glowing eyes intense. Then, without warning, she stood up, wincing from the pain. She reached down, grabbing her armor and adjusting it with a practiced ease. "You should not be involved in this," she said, her voice calm but firm. "You do not know what you are dealing with." "I don't care," Jack replied quickly. "I'm already involved, and I'm not going to let you go alone." Not after everything. For a long moment, they locked eyes. There was a strange silence between them, but Jack could feel the weight of the moment. Something had shifted. He wasn't just some guy trying to help a wounded stranger anymore. He was part of something far bigger. Something that he didn't fully understand yet, but something that felt important. The sound of footsteps outside interrupted their moment. Jack quickly moved to the door and locked it, his hands trembling slightly as he fumbled with the bolt. He could hear the distinct sound of boots on the pavement, a slow, steady rhythm that sent chills down his spine. "They're here," Jack said, his voice barely a whisper. His eyes flicked to the woman, who was already moving toward the back door of his apartment, her movements swift and graceful, despite her injuries. "I can fight them," she said, but there was a note of hesitation in her voice now. She looked at Jack as if considering whether or not to let him get involved. "No," Jack replied firmly, though he wasn't sure why he felt so confident. "I don't want you fighting them alone." She studied him for a moment longer, and then gave a small nod. Jack was sure it wasn't just because he had insisted, but because she recognized the truth in his words. There was a faint knock at the door, and Jack's breath caught in his chest. Whoever they were, they knew he was hiding her. They weren't here to make a deal. They weren't here to negotiate. They were here for her. Jack could hear muffled voices from outside the door. A couple of men, it sounded like. He had no idea who they were, but it didn't matter. They weren't leaving without a fight. The woman moved to the window and peered outside. She made no sound, but Jack could see the look of concentration on her face. "They are waiting," she said softly. "They will not leave until they have me." Jack's mind raced. He had to act. He couldn't just sit here and wait for them to break down the door. He needed a plan. "What do we do?" Jack asked, his voice urgent.
"How do we get out of here?" The woman didn't answer right away. She seemed to be calculating, analyzing.
Finally, she turned back to Jack. "We leave, but we must move fast." If they catch us, there will be no escape. Jack nodded, feeling the weight of the decision pressing on him. There was no turning back now. "Let's go," Jack said, his voice steady. With that, the two of them quickly moved toward the back door. Jack's heart raced as he opened it, stepping out into the alley behind his apartment. The night air was cold, but there was no time to think about that. The sound of footsteps grew louder, and Jack knew they didn't have much time. They moved swiftly, staying in the shadows, keeping low. Jack's mind raced as he tried to think of their next move. He had no plan, no experience in situations like this, but he had something else, determination, and he wasn't going to let her down. Not now. As they ran through the alley, Jack felt an odd sense of calm wash over him. Despite everything, despite the chaos, he knew one thing for sure. He was going to protect her. He didn't know how or why, but he couldn't let anything happen to her. And as they rounded a corner, Jack caught a glimpse of their pursuers. They weren't far behind. The chase was on. Jack and the alien woman, Vieira, moved through the city's back streets with a quiet urgency. The night was darker now, and the lights from the street lamps flickered in the distance, casting long shadows on the pavement. Jack's heart pounded in his chest, not from exhaustion, but from the fear that kept creeping in. He was in over his head, far beyond anything he'd ever imagined. He couldn't believe this was happening. One minute, he was an ordinary guy, walking home from work, trying to get over a failed relationship. The next, he was running through the streets with a wounded alien warrior trying to outrun mercenaries who were out for her blood. Vera didn't seem bothered by the running. In fact, she moved with the precision and speed of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. She didn't speak much, but Jack could tell that her mind was working just as quickly as her body. She was calculating their next move, analyzing their surroundings, watching every shadow as if expecting danger to leap out at them from every corner. "We need to get to the underground tunnels," Vieira said suddenly, breaking the silence between them. Jack barely had time to process what she said before she grabbed his arm and pulled him toward an old building. The door was rusted, and it creaked when she pushed it open. Inside there was nothing but darkness, except for a faint, eerie glow coming from below. Jack hesitated for a moment, but Vieira didn't stop. She moved quickly down the stairs, pulling him along behind her. Jack stumbled, trying to keep up. The steps were uneven, and the air in the tunnel smelled damp and musty. It was a far cry from the clean, bright streets of the city he was used to. He felt a chill run down his spine. It wasn't just the cold air that made him feel uneasy. It was the fact that they were hiding now. They were on the run, and he had no idea how to stop it. "I don't know where we're going," Jack said, his voice barely a whisper.
"I don't know how to get you out of here." Vieira didn't answer right away. She kept moving, her footsteps sure and steady.
The glow from her body seemed to light the way, casting strange shadows on the walls. She was leading them deeper into the underground maze, and Jack had no idea what to expect. He didn't even know what was going on anymore. The city above felt so far away now, as if it had never existed. There was only this tunnel, this darkness, and the feeling that something terrible was closing in. "I will protect you," Vieira finally said, her voice steady. "But I need you to trust me. We are not safe here. They will come for us soon." Jack swallowed hard. He wanted to ask more questions, to understand why all of this was happening, but he knew it wasn't the time. He was here now, and there was no going back. He had made a choice, whether he liked it or not. They kept moving through the tunnels for what felt like hours. Jack's legs ached from running, and his mind raced with 1,000 questions he couldn't answer. Who were the people after Vieira? What did they want with her? And why had she chosen to trust him, a stranger, to help her? Suddenly, they stopped. Vera held her hand up, signaling for Jack to stay quiet. She moved silently to the side, peering around a corner. Jack tried to follow her, but she motioned for him to stay back. Through the crack in the tunnel wall, Jack could see the faint silhouettes of 2 figures standing just ahead. They were tall and menacing, dressed in dark armor that seemed to shimmer under the dim light. Jack couldn't see their faces, but he could feel their presence like a weight in the air. These were the people who were after Vieira. Vieira didn't hesitate. She crouched low, moving like a shadow, barely making a sound. Jack watched, unsure of what to do. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. He was just a guy with no weapons, no skills, and no idea what was going on. All he had was the will to keep going, to protect her. One of the figures ahead shifted, stepping into the light for a moment. Jack caught a glimpse of his face. Alien, but strangely human-looking. He had sharp features, eyes that glowed faintly, and a look of cold determination. Vieira tensed, ready to spring into action, but she stopped. The man had said something in a language Jack didn't understand. Vieira froze, listening. Jack had no idea what was being said, but he knew it wasn't good. "They're looking for her," the figure said in a low, rasping voice. "So, she can't hide much longer. We'll find her." Jack's heart skipped a beat. He hadn't known how serious this was until now. Whoever these people were, they weren't going to give up. And neither was Vieira. He could see the determination in her eyes, the readiness to fight. "We need to move," Vieira whispered, her voice calm but urgent. Jack nodded, though his stomach twisted with fear. He didn't want to fight anyone, especially not some alien soldiers, but he knew they didn't have much choice. Vieira motioned for Jack to follow, and they began to move again, creeping through the tunnels, always staying in the shadows. Jack felt like he was walking through a nightmare, each step taking them deeper into something he didn't understand. But there was no turning back. They had to keep going. After what felt like an eternity, they reached another set of stairs, leading up to another door. This one was old, but it looked sturdy. Vieira carefully tested the door, making sure it was secure before opening it a crack. Jack peered over her shoulder, his eyes wide with anxiety. Above them was a quiet alley. The streets were empty, the world still and silent. For a moment, Jack thought maybe they had escaped, that they were safe. But Vieira's eyes were sharp, scanning every corner, every shadow. "We can't stay here long," she said.
We need to get to a safe place.
Jack didn't argue. He didn't know where they could go, but he wasn't going to question her. She had been leading him this whole time, and so far, she hadn't steered him wrong. They stepped out into the alley, moving quickly but quietly. Jack's thoughts were a blur, his mind struggling to keep up with everything happening around him. He was so focused on staying low and keeping pace with Vieira that he didn't notice the figure watching them from the shadows until it was too late. The figure stepped forward, blocking their path. Jack's breath caught in his throat. This man was tall, with a sharp face and an intimidating presence. He wore armor similar to the soldiers chasing them, and his eyes were glowing with a fierce cold light. "I've been looking for you," the man said, his voice smooth but threatening. "And it looks like you found me first." Jack's heart raced, and for a moment he felt the weight of fear settle over him. They had been caught. There was no way out. But Vieira didn't flinch. She stepped forward, her stance firm and ready for a fight.
"I won't let you take me," she said, her voice filled with determination.
The man smirked, reaching for a weapon at his side. Jack could see the weapon was unlike anything he had ever seen before, shiny and sleek, with strange markings along its length. "Then you will die trying," the man said. Jack's pulse was pounding in his ears. He had no idea what was about to happen, but he knew one thing. This wasn't over yet. He wasn't going to let Vieira fight alone. They were in this together, whether they were ready or not. With one last glance at Vieira, Jack stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The man in front of them was no ordinary soldier. His cold eyes glinted with malice, and his movements were calculated, precise. Jack could feel his heart racing in his chest as the man stepped closer, his weapon glowing ominously in the dim alleyway. The air felt thick with tension. Vieira didn't hesitate. She lunged forward with a speed that Jack couldn't even comprehend. Her hand shot out, grabbing the man's arm and twisting it in a way that made Jack wince. There was no doubt she was a skilled fighter. But the man wasn't going down without a fight. With a snarl, the man jerked back, breaking free from her hold. He swung his weapon at her, and Vieira dodged just in time. She moved with the grace of a dancer, her body fluid and controlled. Jack had never seen anything like it. She was a warrior, a force to be reckoned with. The man was fast, but Vieira was faster. She launched herself at him again, this time aiming for his weapon. There was a brief struggle, and Jack saw Vieira's hand catch the weapon just as the man swung it down. The two were locked in a battle of strength, each trying to gain the upper hand. Jack stood frozen, unsure of what to do. He wasn't a fighter. He didn't know how to help. His mind raced, trying to come up with something, anything, that would turn the tide in their favor. "Vieira!" Jack shouted, trying to get her attention, but she didn't look up. She was focused entirely on the man in front of her, her body tense and her eyes locked onto her opponent. Jack's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching from behind. Panic surged through him. More soldiers. He spun around, his breath quickening as he saw the outline of several figures emerging from the shadows. They were surrounded. "Vieira!" Jack shouted again, his voice desperate. "We need to go!" For the first time, Vieira glanced at him. Her eyes met his, and for a brief moment, Jack could see the conflict in her expression. She wanted to stay and fight. Jack knew that. But the odds were against them. With a swift move, Vieira broke away from the man she had been fighting. She grabbed Jack's arm and pulled him toward the alley's entrance, moving with a speed that left Jack struggling to keep up. The soldiers were closing in fast. Jack's mind raced. Where could they go? He had no idea, but he trusted Vieira. She had been leading them this far, and he couldn't second-guess her now. They turned the corner and found themselves in the bustling streets of the city once more. The world was alive with noise, cars, people, lights. Nothing like the quiet tension of the alley, but the soldiers were close. Too close. Vieira didn't slow down. She kept pulling Jack along, weaving through the crowds, staying low and quick. Jack tried to keep up, his legs burning from the effort. His mind was racing, but he couldn't focus on anything except staying with Vieira, staying safe. The city felt unfamiliar now. The towering buildings, the crowds, none of it seemed real. It felt like they were living in someone else's world, a world that didn't make sense. How had they gone from normal lives to running for their lives in a matter of hours? Jack had no answers, just the burning need to survive.
"Over here?"
Vieira said suddenly, pulling Jack into an alley between two tall buildings. The narrow space was hidden from view, and the sound of their footsteps was muffled by the thick walls. Jack's heart was still racing. He could hear the soldiers getting closer. They were moving fast, and Jack knew they wouldn't stop until they found Vieira. The whole city seemed to be against them now. "Where are we going?" Jack asked, his voice low. Vieira looked at him with determination in her eyes. "There's a place. A safe house. We'll make it there." Her voice was calm, but Jack could tell she was tired. She had been fighting for hours, and it was starting to show. She was strong, but even she couldn't keep going like this forever. Jack nodded. Though he didn't know where this safe house was or how they were supposed to get there without being caught, he didn't ask questions. He just followed her, trusting her every step of the way. They moved through the city's back streets, always staying in the shadows, always looking over their shoulders. Every time they stopped, Jack could hear the soldiers searching, calling out for them. They were getting closer. "I don't know how much longer we can keep this up," Jack said, his voice tight with fear. "They're going to find us." She just kept moving. Jack could tell she was doing everything she could to stay ahead of them. She was strong, but even she had limits. The soldiers weren't far behind. Jack could hear them getting closer. The sound of their boots on the pavement was like a drumbeat, reminding Jack of how close they were to being caught. He felt a cold sweat running down his back. "Vieira!" Jack shouted, his voice frantic now. "We need to do something. We can't just keep running." She stopped and turned to face him. Her eyes were fierce, but there was a trace of exhaustion in her gaze. She was fighting a battle on two fronts, one physical, one emotional. She wanted to protect him, but she couldn't do it alone.
"We need to fight back," she said. "It's our only chance." Jack shook his head.
He didn't want to fight. He didn't know how to fight. But he couldn't argue with her. They didn't have any other choice. "We'll fight," Jack said, though his voice shook. He wasn't a warrior, but he wasn't about to let Vieira down. He had made it this far. There was no turning back now. Vieira reached into her armor and pulled out a small, glowing device. She handed it to Jack. "This is a communicator," she said. "If things go wrong, you can use it to call for help, but only if you have to." Jack took the device, his hands trembling slightly. "What do you mean if things go wrong?" Vieira gave him a small, grim smile. "If they take me, you need to run. You need to survive." Jack's heart clenched at her words. He wasn't about to leave her, not after everything. But he knew that if it came to that, he would have to listen to her. They turned and began walking again, this time with purpose. Jack's mind was spinning, but there was a sense of calm in the air. He wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but he knew that whatever it was, they had to face it together. They reached a narrow, hidden door at the end of an alley. It was old, the paint chipped, but it was secure. Vieira knocked on the door in a rhythm that Jack didn't recognize. A moment later, the door creaked open, and a woman's voice whispered from inside. "Vieira," the woman said, her voice low. "You made it." Vieira nodded. "I brought him." The woman's eyes flicked to Jack, but she said nothing. She stepped aside to let them in, closing the door behind them with a soft click. Inside, the room was small, but cozy. There were no windows, just dim lights hanging from the ceiling, and a few pieces of old furniture scattered around. The walls were lined with bookshelves and strange gadgets that Jack couldn't identify.
"We're safe here,"
Vieira said, her voice more relaxed now, for a while at least. Jack looked around, still on edge. He didn't know how long a while would be, but for now, it was better than being out there with the soldiers. He didn't know who these people were or what they wanted, but for the moment, they were on the same side. Vieira sat down, resting against the wall. Jack followed her, but he kept his distance. He wasn't sure what to say. The air was thick with unspoken words, with everything that had happened and everything that was yet to come. "We can't hide here forever," Vieira said, breaking the silence. "We need to find a way to stop them, or they'll keep coming." Jack nodded. "How do we do that?" Vieira met his gaze. "Whoa! We fight." Jack felt a surge of determination rise within him. For the first time since this had all started, he felt ready. Ready to stand by her. Ready to fight. Together.